And, I think it can be really frustrating to me at times. And I think it's difficult. I think a lot of people sometimes think I'm a robot. I'm not a robot. I have emotions, I have feelings, and it can be really difficult to go through a lot of that. And, I'm 24 years old trying to navigate a lot, and I think at times I've been in this world for 4 years now, and you would never change any of it, but there are times that it is hard, and there are times that, it probably affects me a little bit more than I do put on, and, I would never change any of that for the world.
That is not a woman reading off a script. That is someone who sat on something for a full week before she finally said it out loud. And what came next was not really about a foul at all.
First of all, I know what you guys are going to ask, and I did think it was a flagrant foul, and our reffing just needs to be better, and it's tough. Obviously, the refs are in a really difficult spot. It's one of the hardest jobs in the world, in my opinion, is to make calls. All you do is get yelled at the whole time by everybody. You're never winning. So I think for us, as the league's just got to do better, protecting our players in that regard. I don't really think that it was up for debate. Obviously, it wasn't called in real time. You go back and watch the clip, I think it's pretty strong.
Here is the setup you need. Back on Monday, June 22nd. Caitlin Clark and Alyssa Thomas got tangled up in a play that never got whistled as a flagrant in real time. Clark went down, tempers flared, and for more than a week, the internet refused to let it go. She said nothing. She skipped the cameras, ducked the questions, and let everyone else argue. Now she finally steps up and tells you flat out that in her mind there was no debate. Go back, watch the clip, it is a flagrant. And notice what she is really asking for. Not a suspension, not a headline. Better officiating. Hold on to that, because it comes back around. And here is the thread I want you to keep in the back of your head the whole time. While this circus was spinning, the players of her own league were quietly filling out an all-star ballot. That ballot has now leaked. And the number next to Caitlin Clark's name is going to bother you a lot more than any foul.
Straightforward. It's kind of been a discussion for 3 years now, and I think we really need to do a better job protecting the people in this league. And, obviously I've been involved in a few of those plays, but there's been plenty others across the league that, haven't got called, go back and post-game or whatever it is. Teams can make clips, nothing really changes. So I think overall the league just has to do better, and we have to invest in those areas. The technology can get better. We can treat the referees a little bit better, pay them like they're...
Watch how she frames the referee problem, because it is smarter than it sounds. She does not stand up there and trash the officials as people. She calls it one of the hardest jobs on earth, a job where you get screamed at all night and never win. Then she pivots to the fix. Pay the referees like full-time employees. Invest in the technology. Treat the whole system like it actually matters. That is not a hot take, that is a policy argument, and it lands because she has standing to make it. She points out that this conversation about protecting players has been going on for something like 3 years. She admits she has been on the wrong end of a few of these uncalled plays herself, but she is careful to say it is not just her. There are hard fouls all over this league that get clipped up after the game, dissected online, and then nothing changes. Nobody gets protected. No rule gets tightened. And that is the quiet accusation underneath the calm voice. If the biggest name in the sport can get hit and the whistle stays silent, what exactly is the standard? She is not asking for special treatment. She is asking why there does not seem to be a standard at all.
They come after that, and as I've stood up here and said before, the harassment, the hate, none of that is okay. That goes for the opposing team we play, that goes for my teammates, that goes for my coaches. There should never be a question of character. I've always stood up here and said that, and that's truly what I believe. That's how I was raised. So
now the tone shifts, and this is the part people skip past too fast. She does not just defend herself. She goes out of her way to say the harassment and the hate are not okay when they are aimed at the opposing team, at her own teammates, at her coaches. There should never be a question of anyone's character. And there is a specific reason she reaches across the aisle like that. Right after that Monday game, a live audio room popped up on social media, the kind of open chat anyone can wander into and listen to. According to reporting, and to people who were in it, that room was given a flat-out racist title aimed at a player connected to the incident. I am not going to repeat it. It does not deserve the airtime. But the point is that real racism and real ugliness got thrown at real people, and a lot of that ugliness was being done in Clark's name, on her behalf, whether she wanted it or not. That is what she is standing up to reject. She has said it before, and she says it again here. That is not how she was raised. That is not what she believes, and she does not want her fan base weaponized into something cruel. It is worth pausing on that, because the easy version of this story is that Clark is a victim. The fuller version is that players on every side of this thing have been targeted, and she is one of the few voices trying to say that out loud.
Blew up into national news, really had me kind of like perplexed a little bit. You know, I did see that space. I didn't think about covering that space. I wouldn't be writing an article about that space. But when you see these national news outlets cover one side of the online commentary and completely ignore the other side of the online commentary, you start kind of thinking there's a little bit of bias involved.
Here is where the story gets messy, and where you should keep your skeptic's hat on for every side, including this one. The argument being made is that the national coverage only told half of it, that major outlets ran with one slice of the online nastiness and quietly ignored the rest, which starts to look like a thumb on the scale. And there is a real question buried in there worth asking. Why is the behavior of the worst anonymous trolls on the internet becoming national news at all? The New York Times reported that a player, DeWanna Bonner, provided text messages that amounted to doxing, messages that allegedly revealed where she lived. If that happened, it is genuinely serious, and nobody should wave it away. Doxing is dangerous, no matter who does it. But some people pushed back on the framing and started asking about timing. Were those messages sent after this specific game, or were they pulled from an earlier period, back when Bonner left the Indiana Fever? That is an open question, not a settled fact, and I am flagging it as a question. There was also a claim floating around from one commentary account that Clark had never spoken up about any of this before, that she only ever got a pass because she was a rookie. That one got community noted on Twitter, which is the platform's way of saying, actually, that is not true, here are the receipts. So you have real harassment on one hand, a real doxing report on the other, and a media narrative in the middle that a lot of people feel is being shaped rather than simply reported. All three of those things can be true at once, and that is exactly why it is such a mess.
There's a wall that social media creates, and that wall takes away like humanity. And it's almost like the way I feel about road rage. Like, you get a lot angrier when you're in your car because you don't have that face-to-face humanity connection. And when you take away human connection from people, some of the most insane people can go even crazier. And while never condoning and never wanting to put that kind of thing on the internet myself, block, just hit block. And when it does reach arenas where it's dangerous, you go to the authorities.
There is a comparison in here that actually explains a lot of modern sports discourse. Think about road rage. You become a far angrier version of yourself behind a windshield than you ever would face to face, because the glass removes the other person's humanity. Social media is the same windshield at scale. Strip away the eye contact and the accountability, and the most unstable people online get permission to become their worst selves. That is not an excuse for any of it. It is a description of the machine, and the practical response being offered is pretty grounded. If it is just a troll, block them and move on. If it crosses into something genuinely threatening, where someone's safety is at stake, you stop treating it like a comment section, and you go to the authorities. That distinction matters. But here is the sharper point. There is a difference between reporting a real threat and taking the single most extreme person in a chat room and holding them up as the face of an entire fan base. When you build a national storyline out of the worst voices you can find, you are not describing reality. You are manufacturing a villain. And the collateral damage is the sport itself. Because instead of talking about the basketball, everyone is now sorting through screenshots, trying to decide which anonymous account represents which side. That is a losing game for the league, for the players who are getting genuinely hurt by it, and for the fans who just want to watch great basketball. And it sets up the exact moment where all of this stopped being about a foul and started being about how an entire league feels about one player.
At this point, we just know that there's definitely an animosity towards Caitlin Clark, because just in the guards, they voted her the 11th best guard in the league, which is out of my mind bananas. Like, what 10 guards are better than her? And you know, I know everyone has been saying this, but like, she is not being guarded like the 11th best guard in the league.
So here is the number I promised you. In the players portion of the All-Star vote, the players in this league ranked Caitlin Clark the 11th best guard. 11th. Sit with that for a second. Name 10 guards playing right now who are clearly, obviously better than her. You cannot really do it, and neither can anyone else, which is why this landed like a slap. Because whatever you think of her personality or her fan base, nobody is game planning for the 11th best guard the way entire defenses are built to stop her. She is not being defended like the 11th anything. And it gets stranger the further you read down the ballot. Kelsey Plum, one of the most respected scorers in the sport, got slotted at 12th. Jackie Young landed at 14th. Now, in fairness, Young had a rough stretch of games, but she also lost someone close to her right before that. And there is real human room for grace in a moment like that. Meanwhile, the players had Sabrina Ionescu, voted 4th, Ryan Howard 2nd, Kelsey Mitchell 7th, Aaliyah Boston 8th. And Ryan Howard is a genuinely dangerous two-way player, the kind you never let get hot. But she is streaky, and she does not run an offense the way Clark does. Then look at the contrast with everyone else who voted. The fans put Paige Buchers at number 1. The media put Olivia Miles at number 1 and Buchers at 2. So the fans and the media are looking at one thing, and the players are looking at something completely different. When 3 different groups grade the same season and the players alone bury the biggest name in the game at 11, that gap is not a stat. That gap is a message. And the question stops being who is the better guard and becomes why do the people she shares a court with want to send that message at all?
But when you look at guard statistics, the top guard, top assists, Caitlin Clark. Top in points, Caitlin Clark. She's top 5 in usage. It's just undeniable that she is not an 11th best guard in the league.
Now put the numbers against the vote, because this is where it either holds up or falls apart. Among guards this season, Clark sits at the top in assists. She sits at the top in points. She is top 5 in usage, meaning the entire offense runs through her hands. On paper, there is no honest basketball case for 11th, so the tempting conclusion is obvious. If the film says top 3 and the players say 11, then the players are not grading basketball, they are grading her, and that is a fair reading. But let me be honest about the other side, because the full picture actually complicates the outrage. Barely anyone voted. Out of roughly 180 eligible players, only somewhere around 80 to 85 actually returned a ballot. And a bunch of those ballots reportedly landed in players' spam folders and never got opened. So you are not hearing from the league. You are hearing from a small, self-selected slice of it. On top of that, players tend to vote on reputation and resume, not just this season's box score. And a 2-year pro is always going to be graded partly on a shorter body of work than a 10-year veteran. And notice what was not even released. The guards ranked 5th, 8th, 9th, and 10th were left off the list that went public, so we are missing context on who exactly got slotted where. All of that is real, and all of it cuts against reading this as pure spite. But here is what none of those caveats can fully explain away. A small sample, a spam folder, a resume argument, none of that gets you all the way down to 11 for a player defenses treat like a top 3 threat every single night. You can shave a few spots off with all the fairness in the world. You cannot shave off 8.
And, you know, she definitely gets hot on the court. She definitely gives the refs a piece of her mind. A lot of people don't like that. Sometimes I think she could pipe down a little bit herself, but I also do understand and recognize the swimming upstream that she has to do just to get a foul called on her.
And to be fair to everyone here, Clark is not some silent saint on the floor. She gets heated. She gives the referees an earful. She barks, she gestures, she lets people know exactly how she feels, and plenty of viewers do not love that side of her. Even her defenders will admit there are nights she could probably dial it back a notch. That is a real critique, and it deserves to sit in the story too, because the version where she does nothing wrong is not the true version. But there is a reason the temper exists, and it loops right back to that officiating thread from earlier. She is, in a very literal sense, swimming upstream just to get a foul called. When you are the most physically targeted player in the league and the whistle keeps staying in the referee's pocket, the frustration is not a character flaw. It is a rational response to being hit and getting nothing for it. So you end up with this feedback loop that explains half the drama in this sport right now. She gets hammered, no call comes, she reacts, cameras catch the reaction, and suddenly the story is her attitude, instead of the missing whistle. The reaction becomes the headline, and the thing that caused the reaction disappears. That is exactly the inversion she was trying to name in that press conference. She is not asking to be untouchable. She is asking why the standard that is supposed to protect every player keeps evaporating the moment she steps on the floor. And when you stack that on top of an 11th place ranking from her own peers, you start to understand why this stopped feeling like normal competition to her and started feeling like something she has to keep answering for over and over, season after season, no matter how many times she stands up and says the same thing.
It too. So, at the same time, it's really interesting to me because, even I turned the TV on Sunday and that game was on Wednesday, and that's all people are still talking about. And I feel like that's just a real disservice to our league. And I get it. You talk about it. You talk about whether it's flagrant, you talk about whatever it is. But to continue to beat down, and then for the narrative to be taken other places, that is really just that's just really not acceptable.
And this is the frustration that keeps leaking through everything she says. She points out that she flipped on the television days later, long after the game itself, and the incident was still the only thing anyone wanted to discuss. To her, that is a disservice, and not just to her own team. It buries every other player and every other storyline in a league that is finally having its moment. Because that is the part that gets lost. The talent right now is genuinely absurd. There is a whole generation of guards putting up numbers and playing with a fire that used to get ignored entirely, and all of it is getting drowned out by one endless argument about a single foul and a single player. That is the paradox she is stuck inside. Her presence is a huge reason the ratings are up and the eyeballs are here in the first place, and her presence is also the reason the discourse keeps collapsing into chaos. She is the engine and the lightning rod at the same time, and what she is asking for is almost boringly reasonable. Talk about whether it was a flagrant, fine, have that conversation, then let it end. Fix the officiating so plays like this get handled in real time instead of relitigated for a week online. Get back to the actual games. But notice how tired that ask sounds, because she has made some version of it before. This is not the first time she has stood at a podium and denounced hate and begged people to focus on the basketball. It is something she seems to get dragged into doing twice a season, every season, and there is a real question of how many times a person can say the same thing before they start to wonder whether saying it changes anything at all.
And it's a disservice to my team, but it's also a disservice to the other teams in this league and the other players in this league. There's so much amazing talent, and there's so many amazing players that are playing at an incredibly high rate. The joy and the fire and the fun, that's why you play this game.
And underneath all of it, that last line is the whole point. The joy, the fire, the fun. That is the reason any of these players fell in love with the game in the first place, long before the ballots and the think pieces and the audio rooms. It is easy to forget there is a 24-year-old at the center of this who just wants to hoop. She reminded everyone that she is not a robot, and then she spent the rest of the press conference proving it, hitting every talking point while still letting a little of the exhaustion show through. A few loose ends before you decide what you think. She is going to sit out the next game. She says the days off have been good for her, though the team has stayed deliberately vague about what that actually means, so I am not going to guess at it. The All-Star captains have been set as A'ja Wilson and Paige Bueckers, and Clark half-jokingly pleaded for the Indiana trio of herself, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell to be kept together, which almost certainly will not happen. And in a fitting twist, the Players of the Month came out as Caitlin Clark and A'ja Wilson, which tells you the on-court resume and the peer respect are not exactly lining up. So here is the real question, and I want your honest answer. Is the 11th place ranking a fair basketball opinion from the people who know the game best? Or is it the clearest proof yet that this league has a personal problem with Caitlin Clark? Tell me which one it is down in the comments. Hit that like button if you want more breakdowns like this. Subscribe so you do not miss the next one. And I will see you right after the Sunday game.